Welcome to another Web Rough Cuts. In this video, I want to demonstrate for you how we can begin to apply some content styles to this project website. So you may recall where we left off with this in some previous videos is we have a fully functional prototype site based on some solid markup and just standard web browser functionality like hyperlinks that take us to different pages and things like that. We have also since then fleshed out our design a lot more so that we actually have content styles applied to all of the elements on the page. We've brought in some images and we've brought in sample content so that we can get a sense of where we're headed with our site. So just taking a quick perusal through this, you can also see that I've kept things pretty simple. We don't have a lot of different styles to work with, but we have enough that we have some things to work on now. So first of all, we want to bring over our font settings from Google Fonts. So as a quick review, I like to use the Craft plugin and the Sync Styles option here to get a sense of what fonts are in my document. Now, if you don't have the Craft plugin, this can be just a matter of clicking through some of your type elements to get a sense of what kind of type styles you have applied. But in this area right here, I can see that I have open sans, and I have the bold, the light italic, and I also actually have the regular. Okay, so the only one I need italic for is the light. Otherwise, I want bold, regular, and light. So I can go to my googlefonts.com. And I'm going to look for Open Sans. There he is. Add him to my collection, open him up, go to Customize, and I want light, light italic, regular, and bold. Okay, with those on, I switch back to Embed, click Import, and grab that line right there. And then I can go put it into my style sheet like this, and I have my fonts loaded and ready to go. So let's just practice applying those. We might go to Body, and we're going to use this nice little font family setting that comes with Google Fonts as well. And let's just check to see that we have things lined up, and we'll see that we have a pretty significant thing to take care of. That is no styles. Why not? Well, when we finished up our last round of this, we didn't know about style sheets, and so we didn't include our style sheet in the header. So that's just a matter of adding this kind of markup like you've learned in other videos. Oops. And we want to point to our style sheet, but because I want this to go in every page, I'm going to be smart and use my document relative, or sorry, site relative path with the / at the beginning. Now I just need to copy this and paste it into all of my files. So now all of my files point to this one central style sheet. So any changes I make here should be reflected in all of those pages. And I can test it by clicking through and validating that all of the pages indeed have that Open Sans font applied by default thanks to the setting I just put on my body tag. Okay. So another thing I like to do is to put a little comment area in here and bring over my colors from my sketch file. So that's a matter of looking at a section like this if you've got the Craft plugin and determining which of the colors that it's aggregated here that you might want, or simply clicking through your comp to find all the colors that you need. Now I've prepared these in advance, so I will just paste them in. All right, and so we have these colors now at easy access to bring them in when we need them. All right, now it's time to actually start setting things up. So recall that in order to match font sizes, we go to the HTML element and we set font size to 10 pixels. Then any font sizes we do on any other element can be set up with the font size in rem units. So on body here, I want to lay in as many of the default settings as possible so that I don't have to keep repeating myself for things that use those same settings. So the color of dark gray, the font size of, let's figure out from our comp, looks like body copy is 14 points and 20 line height, and light in weight. So font size 1.4 rem, font weight 300. That's from the Google API. Weight for the lightweight is 300. Line height is 2 rem. That's 20 pixels. We move the decimal place 1 to the right like we did with 14, and we are left with 2.0, so I just cut it off at 2. All right, with that in place, you can see all the more we have that lightweight applied to elements that don't have that overridden in any other fashion, and you can see that is looking really nice with the light and the dark gray and other things like that. Okay, so that's provided a really nice baseline. Another thing I will often do is begin to clear out things like margin and padding, just in case there are default settings on those. So I'm going to put that on body and on HTML just to be sure. Okay, now it's time to go through and set up styles for some of the basic elements. So for example, hyperlinks need to be this hyperlink yellow. That's a pretty simple one. Then we have at least 4 levels of headings, and these are going to be that font weight of bold. So font weight 700, and they're each going to have a different font size. Let's see what our H1 is in the mockup. Looks like it's 37 and line height of 40. So font size 3.7 rem. Line height 4 rem. Okay, so that should get a little bit larger and space out as such. And then we'll also want to put our 0 margin on there for now. We could tweak that later as we begin refining. Okay, so let's circle through and get some of those basics set up on each of the other headings. So here's heading 2, 3, and 4. All right, so heading 2s are like this one here, I believe. Yep, so 23 and line height of 4. So 2.3, line height of 4. That should be affected. Okay, we also have elements like H3s. Let's see, I think I have some H3s on the home page because those are H2s, right? Yep, H3 is there. Okay. This one is, okay, so this is like the same size as the body copy, but bold. So we're going to go, H3s are 1.4, and line height of 2. We're going to do the same thing on H4s. I don't think I have any examples in my markup, but I simply want to make them font style italic, which makes me think that we also will need the 700 I weight from Google Fonts. Okay, good deal. Okay, so that's the basic settings. You could browse through your site to check to see if you have any other basic elements. You notice I did not do anything with paragraphs or list items, but you might need to do that. So for example, I know that I do want some 10 pixels of space on the bottom of paragraphs, but I'm going to zero out the top, the right and the left, and leave that 10 pixels on the bottom to get my paragraphs spaced correctly. Let's go to an article where we can see that at play. Okay, that's what I'm looking for from my comp. You also might want to go in and do the same thing for list items. Something I'll often do is at least tweak the margin and padding settings for ULs because they have a default setting that isn't always what I want. In fact, they usually have default left padding. So I'm going to zero out that padding and instead put on the desired margin that I want. Let's do 30 pixels of left margin and 10 pixels of bottom margin. So I'm basing that off of what I have on my paragraphs in terms of the 10 on the bottom. But I want to say 30 pixels from the left so that my bullets at least normal bullets. I really won't want bullets on this in the long run, but normal bullets get a little bit of an offset, but not a lot. So see how that kind of centers them. I like that. Okay, so that is the basic sweep of basic elements. With only the exception that we have not fine-tuned the space between headings and the elements below them. So in order to do that, I want to kind of get a sense of what the normal spacing is. So here's an H2, and it has a paragraph below it, and there's 9 pixels of space. Here's an H2, and it has a paragraph below it, and there's 22 pixels of space. Okay, how about here? What's going on here? 12. Okay, so we've been pretty inconsistent with these spaces. Okay, so that tells me that I either need to consider being more consistent in my design so that the space between H2s is more or less the same, or I'm going to need to go with one that is more normal than others and then override it later. So I'm going to kind of favor the let's do something consistent idea. And I found that the two on the home page were 9 pixels away. This one is also 9 pixels, so I'm going to go with that 9 pixels idea and just see what it looks like. So some handy shortcuts in Sketch. If you have one item selected, you can hold Alt and hover over another element, and you can see the space between those. And then you can use the arrow keys to nudge things around. So I'm just nudging this up until there's 9, and I'm okay with that. Same thing here. Yeah, 12 is so close to 9, why not? And then I guess, what's the spacing here? 24, arbitrary because of the height. So I'm not going to worry about that for now. We can tweak it later. And then this one, oh, maybe it just needs a little bit more. 9. Okay, now all that's going to depend on how the elements are sized above each other. But notice that in each of those cases, my box is 40 pixels high, 40 pixels high, because they're single line headings. And as long as they're all consistent, yep. Okay. So all that to say, I believe that we can now indeed tell that H2s have 9 pixels of space below them. But let's start up with H1s. This is the only H1, and it has a paragraph below it, and it is 8 pixels away. So we're going to go up to our H1, and on the bottom do 8 pixels of margin. The H2s, we just ensured had 9 pixels. I'm seeing a trend. Let's go ahead and assume the same thing for our H3s and H4s. Okay, so we fine-tuned the spacing there, and now I think we can say that most of our elements are where they need to be. All right, so the question now becomes what other details do we need to pull into alignment? Okay, so this is going to be a matter of kind of going through each page and comparing it to your comp and seeing what's out of alignment. So the first thing I notice is that we still have some work to do on our masthead here. And this also begins to get into some of the box model styles, in that if I want to apply the content style here of white text and whatnot, that white text is not going to be visible unless I also make the container into the red color. So let's begin working on that. That would be our nav. A nav needs to have a background of red. Not just any old red, but the red from our comp, which I have put up here for easy access. Okay, progress, right? All right, now we want the nav LIs to not have bullets. Okay, and we want to make sure that the nav UL does not have the normal spacing that we just told it to have, so that's margin left of 0. Actually, let's clear out all of the margin. Okay, so that now they're hugging that left side. Now we need the font size on those list items to be what we want, so 2.3 and bold and line height of 4, which is really similar to my H2s. So let's grab those settings from the H2s and paste them in. Why enter it all over again? All right. Now, if I want to start affecting the color here, I need to remember that inside of my list items, I have hyperlinks. And hyperlinks are set to be blue by default. So I now need to not just set color on the list items, but actually set color on the A tags inside. So I'm going to go to nav A, so that would be hyperlinks inside of nav, and I'm going to set their color to white, because that's the kind of normal. And I don't want the underline effect, which is text decoration, none. Okay, so now they are white by default and bolded. Now, notice that the selected one in the comp is yellow and has a border below it. Okay, so I'm going to do something in the markup in order to make that happen. Basically, on the page that is kind of the active page, I'm going to want to go on the li for that item and add a class of active. So on the about, I would put that on the about item. And in the products section, I would put it on the products. Okay, and I would want to make sure to put this on each of the products like this. And in the articles section, I want to put it on this one. And of course, I want to make sure that I do that to all of the articles like this. All right, so basically that gives me one kind of a hook that I can use in my style sheet to select that active item and style it accordingly. So this is going to be a little tricky because it's going to be a nav A, but it's not just any old nav A, it's one that's also inside of an active item. So the active class is on the li. The A tag inside of the li is what we now want to make our yellow color. It's Lego yellow. We don't need the text decoration anymore, but we do want a border bottom. And let's go figure out what that is. It's the yellow, of course, but how thick is it? Looks like it's 6 pixels thick. So 6 pixels, solid yellow. Okay, good. So you can see we've got the idea, and because that class moves around depending on which page we're on, we get the effect of looking like we're on that selected page. Okay, so that's enough for me for now. Technically, we would need to finesse the spacing around, but I want to wait and save that for when we do the layout portion. Okay, so there are all kinds of other details that you might need to work out, and the key is going to be making sure that you have a selector or a hook that you can use to select and style that element, and that that selector is appropriately specific. So as you look throughout your site, if you have a similar element that is styled similarly throughout the whole site, such as like a price element or a author element, so like if this author date idea here is styled the same here as it is on my individual article page, that's going to be a big help in that if I have the same styles in my design comp, I could try to make sure that I have the same or similar markups, perhaps through a class in my actual HTML, and it becomes very simple to apply those styles. So for example, you may recall that we did that. Here we had the, let's see, it was called author date class that just makes this line italics. And we use that same class in the list page here, author date. So all I need to do is go into my style sheet, and select the class of author date and do font style italic. And then I get that here and in my articles. Benefits of a central style sheet that allows you to be much more efficient. So if you don't have classes, if you don't have things that you can use as hooks to select and style, then you're going to want to do that. But keep in mind that it's not always the most efficient thing to put the class directly on an element. Sometimes it's more efficient to use a container. An example would be if you wanted to do something similar with all of the lead-ins that are inside of this one particular page. I think it's the article page in particular. Maybe you have lead-ins elsewhere in your site and you only want to do this style to the lead-ins here. Well, something you could do is go out to, say, the body tag or maybe just the main tag, basically the outermost element that is still kind of pertinent to this page. So main might be the best one in this case. And we might say this is the, let's see, this is the article list page. Okay, so being a little bit long helps you be specific, but don't make it exorbitantly long. Article list page is as short as I could keep it while also being specific that this is the page that has the article list. I might want to put the class of article list on the UL itself, so I added page to kind of broaden that. Okay, so then I could say article list lead-ins get a certain style that distinguishes them from other pages. So one case for that for me is that I might want to do something different with the price elements on the product list page that is different from what I do with them in here. Okay, so I might put a class on my product pages, individual pages, like class single product page. Okay, and so then I could say single product page price like that. Maybe I want to make them larger, font size of 2.3 rem. Okay, so that made it large. But maybe normal prices are just italicized. Okay, so the result is that this one is a price, so it's going to be italicized, but it's also inside of single product page, so it's made larger. Whereas here on the main products page, it's just a price and it's only italicized, not made larger. So make sure you harness the power of selectors as you work out your comp to make it what it needs to be. Good luck.